Back in 2015, in a small room bathed in warm sunlight, Hyun-o washed a pile of dishes that had been accumulating for days. His girlfriend, Hyun-o, playfully tested his love with silly questions and playful nips on his leg. It seems our female lead, Hyun-o, had a slightly twisted personality, even going so far as to force her boyfriend to choose between her and the 9 o'clock news. 2 years later, the silly questions continued, but Hyun-o was now sweeter and more endearing. Fast forward to the present, and Hyun-o is engaged in a heated argument with her team leader because he wants to change her job assignment, which she dislikes. Hyun-o uses sharp words to shut the team leader down. At this point, someone steps up to take the assignment, but to Hyun-o's surprise, it's Hyun-o, her ex-boyfriend. Since their breakup, Hyun-o has seen Hyun-o as a thorn in her side, and this news makes her furious. Adding fuel to the fire, the team leader tries to persuade Hyun-o to take the job, despite its demanding nature. Hyun-o, however, accepts the assignment. Hyun-o is ready to explode as she witnesses the team leader's favoritism, but he then gives her a dressing down for refusing a job that could boost her fame. The team leader forces her to convince Hyun-o to give up the special broadcast slot. Hyun-o tries to play it off by saying that he must still love her and wants to be her hero, so she doesn't need him to give up anything. After a back and forth, Hyun-o decides to change the broadcast schedule from 4 p.m. to the morning because she loves sunrises. Hyun-o questions his logic, wondering how he, as a mere employee, could have the power to change the schedule. In the blink of an eye, she finds herself beside her ex-boyfriend, now presenting the 4 p.m. broadcast in the morning. After the work is done, Hyun-o sits on the team leader's chair and demands an explanation. Why was it so easy to change the schedule for a broadcast just because of Hyun-o's words? Isn't he aware that the two presenters once dated for 8 years? Hyun-o can't accept the reality of working alongside her ex-boyfriend. During lunch, she shares the situation with Jaeon, but he can't understand why, after their breakup, she couldn't move on to him. Hyun-o coldly states that she only enjoys the company of guys who are rude to everyone except her. She vows to get revenge on this annoying man. The next day, Hyun-o dresses provocatively, sporting a fluffy hairdo, and continuously moves around to make herself the center of attention. Then, she steps on Hyun-o's foot with her high heels, having just been cut off by him. After the show ends, Hyun-o confronts her ex-boyfriend about stealing her lines, but he simply tells her she's not professional and leaves. Hyun-o is fuming when a co-worker rushes to cover her, revealing that her dress has ripped. Hyun-o steps in to save the situation and prevent a wardrobe malfunction on air. Hyun-o is stunned and tells Jaeon about it, but he advises her not to hate her ex-boyfriend anymore, since she must still have feelings for him. Suddenly, Hyun-o suggests going on a date with Jaeon, leaving him surprised. They discuss plans for the evening while Hyun-o works nearby. Hyun-o debates with his colleagues about sending Hyun-o on a challenging shoot, correctly predicting that she'll be excited by the opportunity. True enough, Hyun-o instantly agrees to go. She then cancels her date with Jaeon, seemingly without regret. However, Jaeon decides to go with her, seizing a rare chance. The next day, Hyun-o is asleep when he gets a message about a 2-day, overnight shoot with Hyun-o. He urges his colleagues to finish their work that day. Hyun-o throws herself into the work, while Jaeon watches from the side, amused by her soaked and bedraggled appearance. Her co-workers feel embarrassed for her. After everyone else leaves, Jaeon takes off his own shirt and gives it to Hyun-o to wear because she's soaked through. Meanwhile, Hyun-o is worried and calls, but no one answers. After taking Hyun-o home, Jaeon asks her why she wanted to go on a date with him, since it wasn't based on love. Hyun-o confesses that she hates her ex-boyfriend because she can't have him. Hearing this, Jaeon asks Hyun-o who she would choose. If she chooses him, he will continue to pursue her, but if she rejects him, he will stop chasing her. Hyun-o keeps saying she's old, but Jaeon responds with a kiss. Suddenly, a girl with bangs covering her face appears. A colleague across the room identifies her as Ju Hyeri. Min-young, noticing Hyeri's dazed expression, asks her what she just dreamed about. Every time she has strange dreams, Hyeri goes to her therapist to tell her everything. The therapist suggests that she might create some excitement in her life, like falling in love, to help her condition. Hearing this, Hyeri smiles as if she's already got her target in mind. The next morning, Hyeri sits reading a book to hold a spot for her heartthrob, Ju-yeon, a man who is cold to everyone except his family. Every day, she secretly helps him park his car, but she doesn't know how to face him directly. She tells her colleague that she's lost her memories from before, so she's confident she can capture his heart. However, as soon as Min-young mentions Ju-yeon's name, Hyeri hides away. The scene shifts to Ju-yeon's room. His family seems unique, as his mother often calls him, but always mistakenly believes he's her deceased older brother. The following day, Min-young mentions Ju-yeon's close friend, but Hyeri is sure it's just one-sided love. Just as she predicted, at the company, Ju-yeon speaks with Hyun, a woman he's gentle with, and always rejects her. Hyeri informs her co-workers that she's preparing to face her crush, but when Ju-yeon appears, she hides again because she's not ready. Suddenly, a group of people arrives, aggressively wanting to confront Ju-yeon because he gave them wrong information. Hyeri walks out after printing some documents and sees her crush being attacked. Hesitating for a moment, she rushes to save him. She grabs Ju-yeon's hand and runs, though she doesn't know where they're going. In a storage room, Ju-yeon covers Hyeri's mouth because he's worried her breathing will reveal their hiding place. Standing near her crush, Hyun-o stares at him for a moment before summoning her courage and kissing him. Ju-yeon is taken aback. This is a golden opportunity, so Hyun-o passionately kisses him again, savoring the warmth of her crush. Ju-yeon stands frozen, while Hyun-o, having done her deed, cheerfully leaves. Back home, Ju-yeon sits in a corner, bewildered, as if his heart has been stolen. Returning home, Hyeri is startled to see the person from her dream. Hyun-o visits his ex-girlfriend's home after she went on a business trip, only to receive an unusual reaction from Hyun-o. A flashback shows two young children playing happily together, clearly deeply fond of each other. When Hyeri gets hurt on her hand, Hyun-o, who's inside the house, sees it and starts crying out of concern for her younger sister. Hyeri then goes to see a doctor and recounts the events, but the doctor calls her Hyun-o. Hyeri can't believe that she's Hyun-o, the broadcaster from her strange dream. She points to a scar on her arm, but it's strangely gone. The doctor explains that she has dissociative identity disorder. Back home, Hyeri writes in her diary about the discovery, telling herself that the doctor must be mistaken. At 4 a.m. the next day, Hyun-o's personality takes over. As she goes to work, Hyun-o keeps asking about the previous night, but Hyun-o has no memory of it. Instead, she's annoyed and irritated with him. At the studio, Jae-yeon ignores Hyun-o completely because she rejected him the night before. He treats her like she's invisible. When Hyun-o returns home, she goes to sleep and wakes up at 4 p.m. as Hyeri. At work, Hyeri dances around excitedly, telling Min-young about how she kissed her crush the previous night. Despite her excitement, when Ju-yeon arrives, she hides in a corner. Unexpectedly, Ju-yeon searches for Hyeri. Min-young, sensing her friend isn't ready, tells Ju-yeon that she's not there and makes a date with him for 8 p.m. Hyeri explains that her kiss and subsequent escape were all part of her plan, and she continues to fold small stars. After work, Ju-yeon goes home, but the elevator is crowded, so he takes a different route. A blue door labeled Expansion leads to a different world. Ju-yeon goes to find the girl who kissed him in the rain, but she's not there. Hyeri just got her documents and is about to leave when she sees Ju-yeon approach. She trembles, wanting to flee, but she's rooted to the spot. Ju-yeon repeatedly questions why she kissed him, wondering if it's because he looks easy to manipulate. He can't figure it out. Hyeri stammers incoherently, then bursts into tears. Ju-yeon is angry and walks away. Hyeri cries in the rain as she tells Min-young about seeing her crush and how he was furious, leaving her unsure of what she's doing. The next morning, Hyun-o wakes up confused, seeing that her eyes are swollen. At 4 p.m., Hyeri goes to work, but she no longer reserves Ju-yeon's spot. She sits inside, folding small stars. Ju-yeon sees a gift that Hyun brought him. She urges him to open it, 1,000 paper stars that grant a wish. Ju-yeon isn't interested and walks away. Hyun runs after him, but he's angry and yells at her. However, her reaction is to cheer him on because this is the first time he's shown his emotions. After work, Ju-yeon once again steps into the door that opens to another world. Back at his place, Ju-yeon curiously looks at the gift and finds a letter from Hyeri expressing her feelings. He remembers the times he'd unintentionally met her and how she always saved his parking spot. He regrets his angry outburst. As Hyeri gets off work, she's surprised to see Ju-yeon waiting outside. She sincerely apologizes and inquires about his well-being. But Ju-yeon tells her he wasn't angry about the stolen kiss. In fact, he's more curious about her personality. Hyeri apologizes again and starts to leave, but then stops. Ju-yeon also wants to know more about her, so he calls her name. At his call, Hyeri turns around and suggests they go somewhere to talk. Surprisingly, Ju-yeon drives her to his home. Hyeri inquisitively asks about the person in the photo in his living room. Ju-yeon explains that the person standing with him is his brother, who died after the photo was taken, and tells Hyeri about the pain it caused his mother. Hyeri replies, "It's good he's still alive," which offers Ju-yeon a small comfort. Hyeri then introduces herself, saying her name is Hyeri and she's 28 years old. Ju-yeon is surprised because her appearance makes her seem older, probably due to lack of self-care. When Hyeri mentions that her parents are gone, but she has a brother, Ju-yeon unconsciously smiles. He has feelings for Hyeri, so he asks her to stay a little longer. They chat, and Hyeri ends up spending the night. The next morning, Hyun-o wakes up in panic because she's in a stranger's house. After examining a business card, she realizes it's her coworker's. At work, Hyun-o investigates this unfamiliar man. Meanwhile, Hyun-o argues with his colleagues about reserving breaking news for his ex-girlfriend. This assignment is difficult, but it would also boost Hyun-ho's fame. Hyun-o is still confused about why she ended up at the man's house when her colleague comes to give her a new assignment. Despite the lingering confusion, she immediately agrees to the task when she hears she'll be on air for 10 minutes. She arrives at the location and finds her colleagues waiting outside, but she goes alone into a secret refrigerated truck to film the illegal activities of a criminal. Initially, she's bold, but when she sees the frozen body inside, Hyun-o gets suspicious and wants to leave. Suddenly, someone discovers her and locks the door from outside. Hyun-o calls her colleagues for help, but they're too drunk to answer. She tries to call the police but remembers her colleagues' warning that if this gets out, they're all finished. In desperation, she thinks of the man who promised to be there for her if she was in danger, but they haven't been in touch for a long time. Just when she's lost all hope, she hears a noise outside. Chan-woo opens the door and saves her. In the distance, a familiar figure approaches. It turns out Hyun-o has come to rescue her, too. Hyun-o is at home, constantly reminding Shin-young to take care of the ladies at the hospital. Shin-young then asks Hyun-o to set up the food table outside because he's the only adult who can do it. Meanwhile, the older women are preparing the food, and Chun-ja complains about being old but still having to fry pancakes. Apparently, all her grandkids are working now. It turns out this is the day of Hyeya's memorial, and Ju-yeon is back home preparing. Hyun-o finishes his work, takes a shower, and then gets a call from Soo-young. She tells him that Hyun-o was filming when she got locked inside a refrigerated truck and that she's busy, so she can't go. The situation is urgent because there's a dead body in the truck and her colleagues are too drunk to help. Hyun-o immediately rushes to rescue his ex-girlfriend. After saving Hyun-o, they go home together, leaving the refrigerated truck for the police to handle. As usual, Hyun-o buckles Hyun-ho's seat belt. She notices the necklace he always keeps in the car and is touched. When they arrive at her place, she asks why he came to her rescue when she texted Soo-young. Hearing his explanation, Hyun-o tells him that next time, even if she's about to die, he shouldn't show up. She then leaves. Hyun-o runs after her and tells her that he's embarrassed by her behavior. The next morning at the company, Soo-young shares with her colleagues how Hyun-o still has feelings for his ex-girlfriend and is secretly protecting her. She then asks him directly if this is love. Before he can answer, she points out that Hyun-o is the one she's talking about, leaving him speechless. Humiliated in front of his colleagues, Hyun-o drags Soo-young aside and warns her to be well-behaved at work. He also denies still being in love with Hyun-o. Suddenly, Soo-young mentions that their grandmother hurt her leg, so Hyun-o immediately calls to check on her. Soo-young then says that her wrist hurts and that's why she went to the hospital. Hyun-o, concerned, reaches out to touch her wrist, but she keeps resisting. Hyun-o walks by and sees Hyun-o on the phone, checking Soo-young's wrist. Meanwhile, Yi-young returns to the company excitedly and goes to his brother's office to report something. The team leader hears his brother's voice and drops the cup in his hand. He slams the door shut before Yi-young can enter, refusing to see him. The team leader can't believe what's happening. The scene shifts to Ju-yeon, who arrives at work and looks around for Hyeri, but can't find her. He goes into his office and sees Hyun asking him if she's pretty. He seriously compliments her, leaving her surprised. To confirm, Hyun goes to see Chief Young's son to ask about today's unusual events. She also wonders who Ju-yeon's girlfriend is. At lunchtime, she tells her colleagues about the situation and asks them to discreetly investigate the identity of Ju-yeon's girlfriend. During the anchorman's broadcast, Hyeri senses something wrong with his behavior, which is overly casual. He blatantly asks Ju-yeon about his girlfriend, who just nods in response. He then leaves before Hyun can find out anything more. After work, Ju-yeon goes to the parking lot but can't find Hyeri, leaving him feeling a bit deflated. He goes home and looks at the cup Hyeri used, reminiscing about their relaxed conversation. He confides in her about things he's kept hidden for a long time. He shares that when he and his brother last took a picture together, his brother was in a fatal accident. His mother believes the incident happened because of Ju-yeon's inauguration, which makes him feel incredibly guilty. To ease his mother's pain, Ju-yeon learned that his brother's last wish was to become a broadcaster. He then gave up his job to fulfill his brother's dream. Hearing this, Hyeri asks if Ju-yeon's brother is happy and if Ju-yeon is truly happy living this way. This question makes Ju-yeon ponder for a moment. The next day, Ju-yeon asks Hyeri where she went when she woke up, but she doesn't remember anything. He suddenly says he wants to wake up with her. Ju-yeon also mentions that he knows she works there and about the times she secretly saved his parking spot and then hid. He tells her that he found it endearing because she's the first person to do those things. He then tells her he'll pick her up after work and leaves. Yi-young, at the parking lot, sees a girl who looks like his colleague, Hyun-o, but she seems strange. Meanwhile, Hyun is curious about Ju-yeon's girlfriend. To her surprise, she sees Ju-yeon taking a girl, presumably his sister, home. The next morning, Hyun-o goes to work as usual, only to find the director introducing a beautiful young woman named Jin-ho. He also says some nasty things to Hyun-o. The team leader informs Hyun-o that his ex-girlfriend is being bullied and might lose her job because the director is smitten with the new woman. The director calls Hyun-o into his office and scolds her for false rumors spreading online, not giving her a chance to explain. Hyun-o is upset and sent out, but when Ju-yeon enters, the director's attitude immediately changes. Meanwhile, Yi-young chases after his brother, asking him about the girl who looked like Hyun-o that he saw at the parking lot. He wonders if it's his sister. Shin-jung only cares that his brother went to a different parking lot and not the one at their company. Hyun-o is reprimanded during a meeting for going out to film twice without permission. She admits that she went out to film on her own and wasn't forced. Jin-ho then steps up and wants Hyun-o to apologize to everyone for her actions, leaving her shocked. However, to keep her job, Hyun-o stands up and apologizes for embarrassing anyone, then looks at her ex-boyfriend. It turns out that the night before, Hyun-o had told her he felt embarrassed because people kept asking her if she was his talentless ex-girlfriend. While she's feeling down, Yi-yang comes by and asks about the girl he saw at the parking lot who looked exactly like her. He remembers that she said her sister passed away a long time ago. Hyun-o quickly denies it and scolds him for talking nonsense. The scene goes back to the past, when Hyun-o receives news of her sister's disappearance in a forest. She's devastated because she's the one who encouraged her sister to go on a real-world adventure, leading to Hyeri's disappearance. While reading her sister's diary, Hyun-o finds out that Hyeri always dreamed of working at the parking lot. Later, she uses Hyeri's identity to apply for a job there. On her first day, Hyun-o wears bangs to cover half her face and uses her sister's identity to get to know her colleagues. She then goes to see a therapist for her amnesia, because every time she wakes up, she has strange wounds on her body. Hyun-o drinks and reminisces about her missing sister. The police dismissed the case because adults can run away from home on their own. Ever since Hyeri disappeared, the whole family has been worried sick. The next day, Hyun-o bumps into Ju-yeon and the girlfriend of her alternate personality, so she quickly hides. They lock eyes, full of animosity. Hidden to the side, Hyun-o suddenly remembers the image of the paper stars and what the doctor said, causing her to panic, smash a mirror, and faint. When Hyeri's personality wakes up, she finds herself in bed next to Ju-yeon. She has no memory of what happened and doesn't understand why she ran away or smashed the mirror, as Ju-yeon explained. Hearing that she has to pay for the mirror, Hyeri is startled, but Ju-yeon says he already took care of it. Seeing his concern, she teases him, asking if he's investigating her. Hyeri goes to the doctor and recounts everything, saying she doesn't remember anything at all. She's genuinely happy to be called Hyeri. The doctor says they need to find the connection between Hyeri and Hyun-o to resolve the situation. She then asks the doctor what will happen to her if she finds out the reason for her condition. Will she completely disappear from the world? Hyeri genuinely wants to be Hyeri because she's happy living each day. In her dreams, she's always in pain and regret, so she refuses to merge with Hyun-o. She also reveals that she's in love and smiles happily. Back home, Hyeri writes a letter to Hyun-o and goes to sleep. The next morning, Hyun-o wakes up and reads a message from her alternate personality, stating that she's truly happy as Hyeri and hopes Hyun-o will give in a little. Knowing things have gone too far, Hyun-o is annoyed when she goes to work and runs into Hyun-o, who is discussing work-related matters. She unleashes her frustration on him. Meanwhile, Ju-yeon and Hyun are meeting with a business partner, but he keeps touching her, making her uncomfortable. Ju-yeon notices this and speaks up, but the man throws a drink in his face. Ju-yeon then offers to take Hyeri to visit his mother. When they arrive at the hospital, Hyeri is surprised to see her frantically calling out for her deceased brother. However, Hyeri quickly makes herself at home and consoles the mother for her loss. Ju-yeon smiles, seeing Hyeri so naturally connecting with his mother. After taking Hyeri home, Ju-yeon expresses his happiness being with her. She's wearing the ring his mother gave him, and shyly holds his hand. The next morning, Hyun-o wakes up and sees the ring on her finger. She has a headache because she knows how far this couple has come. Later, the company goes on a live broadcast. Hyun-o sneaks away and, by coincidence, ends up at the park where her sister disappeared. Just as her female colleague suggests going for a walk at night, a local tells them about the many disappearances that have happened when people go for walks outside at night and get lost. Hyun-o is heartbroken when she hears this. Later that afternoon, after finishing the broadcast, her colleagues are eating and drinking, but Hyun-o prepares herself to go alone to the edge of the forest, the dangerous place mentioned in the rumor. Ju-yeon sees Hyun-o walking back and reminds her to be careful. He then goes back to eat and drink with his colleagues. Standing at the edge of the forest, Hyun-o looks at the gloomy landscape of trees and remembers the past. She was the one who encouraged her sister to go camping. Hyeri had said she didn't like having friends and only needed her sister, but Hyun-o wanted her sister to expand her social circle and persuaded her to go. After hesitating for a moment, Hyun-o steps into the forest, as if she hears her sister calling her. Suddenly, she hears a scream in her head. She sees the dark forest and hears footsteps, which makes her terrified and run back. She trips and falls, and Hyun-o is truly regretful for letting her sister fall into such a terrifying situation. The image of Hyeri, who's been gone for a long time, keeps appearing in her mind. The next morning, at work, Hyun-o presents a news report about a 14-year-old girl named Ki-hyun, who would often skip meals if her sister didn't urge her to eat. She would stay in her room all day. Since her sister ran away from home, Ki-hyun has been refusing to eat, leading to hospitalization for malnutrition. Hearing this, Hyun-o gets teary-eyed because she empathizes with Ki-hyun. The scene shifts to the room where Ki-hyun is obediently waiting for her sister, like a puppy, to urge her to eat. When she hears that Ki-hyun has a neurological disability and considers her sister her everything, Hyun-o breaks down. She tries to hold it together while she's broadcasting, but there's a voice next to her reminding her to continue with the rest of the program. She's still lost in her thoughts about the past. Her coworker sees this and plays the video of Ki-hyun to manage the situation. Hyun-o's mind is filled with images of Hyeri, and she collapses. Hyun-o, who's next to her, rushes over to comfort her and asks her coworker to call for an ambulance. He tells her he will handle the rest of the program. When Hyun-o hears who made Ki-hyun this way, it's like a knife stabbing through her heart. Hyun-o uses his warm voice to comfort her, wraps his arms around her, and soothes her back to calmness. When he sees she's regained her composure, he starts to co-host the rest of the program with her. After they finish, he sees that she's still heartbroken and takes her hand to comfort her. He then takes her somewhere. Hyun-o ignores the whispers and gossip, holding onto his ex-girlfriend's hand. When they get in the elevator, Yoon-ho tells him to let go and asks him to leave. When Hyun-o asks why, she starts crying and shakes her head, because deep down, she doesn't want him to leave. When the elevator doors open, there are a lot of people entering. Hyun-o steps forward to shield Yoon-ho, so that her sad face is hidden from view. Yoon-ho hides behind him, holding his hand, and realizes she's truly happy because she can still feel him next to her. When everyone exits the elevator, Hyun-o sees that Yoon-ho doesn't want to leave yet, so he stays with her. He can't hold back any longer and gives Yoon-ho a passionate kiss. Yoon-ho is dreaming about when she and her younger sister were children, having their picture taken by their father. Suddenly, she wakes up, finding herself back home, not knowing how she got there. She notices Hyun-o is there, and they go out to eat together. At the restaurant, Yoon-ho is filled with questions and stares at him while he eats, but doesn't dare ask. Hyun-o knows she's struggling with something and asks her to feel free to ask anything, but he answers quickly, trying to brush it off. They return to her place, and Yoon-ho is confused because she doesn't understand why he's still there after their breakup. Hyun-o intends to let her sleep and then leave, but he gets up and returns home only to find Yoon-ho sleeping, crying softly. The next morning, Yoon-ho wakes up startled by Hyun-o's voice, thinking he's already gone. He tells her he will take her to get treatment because he's afraid she'll suffer from anxiety disorder for the rest of her life. They go to the clinic, but Hyun-o gets a call, so Yoon-ho goes in alone. She's shocked when the doctor calls her Hyeri. She states her name is Ju Yoon-ho and asks if she's been there before, introducing herself as Hyeri. Yoon-ho has no memory of any of this. Lately, she's been appearing in strange places, meeting unfamiliar people, and even her phone has disappeared. She occasionally has strange memories flash back to her, but she doesn't know what they are or where they came from. While living as Hyeri, Yoon-ho writes a letter to herself, but it doesn't feel like her own, and she can't believe it. Seung-yoon doesn't know who Hyeri is, so he asks her to share a bit. Yoon-ho hesitates, and after a long time, finally answers that Hyeri is her missing sister. Yoon-ho remembers that after her parents passed away, she met a woman who took her and her sister in and raised them. They grew up together and stayed with her. That's why Yoon-ho decided to buy a house so they could move out and live on their own. At that time, Hyeri refused to move, only wanting to live the way they were then. Yoon-ho scolded her younger sister, but the next day, someone called to report Hyeri missing. For a while, they searched for her, but they couldn't find anything. One day, Yoon-ho visited her grandmother, but she couldn't find anyone answering. When Yoon-ho got closer, she was shocked to find her grandmother had passed away because she couldn't handle her granddaughter's disappearance. Later, Yoon-ho read her sister's diary and decided to apply for a job at the parking lot, to experience living the life her sister loved and get a feel for what it was like to be her. The doctor tells Yoon-ho that she is truly Hyeri and that she has treated her a few times. The fact that she doesn't have these memories shows that she has dissociative identity disorder. This is the first time the doctor has seen Yoon-ho as Hyeri, and he asks permission to film it. Yoon-ho sees herself on the recording, receiving therapy. She is bewildered and amazed. Could it be that the doctor also sees that Ju Hyeri is happy? That night, Ju-yeon goes to the parking lot to look for Hyeri, but she's not there. He asks Min-young, who says she hasn't seen her for a few days either. Hyeri doesn't have her phone and once fainted in the bathroom. Min-young found a phone that he wasn't sure belonged to who, charged it, but it still wouldn't turn on. He wants to get the phone because he knows Hyeri's address and wants to return it to her. The next day, there's a special live broadcast during the Golden Week holiday. Everyone heads to the Square Manum rest stop, a popular destination for travelers during the Golden Week. After the broadcast, Myrae scolds the editor for not letting her read the opening greeting as the main MC, only giving her occasional interviews with locals and telling her to add some silly jokes. She knows Hyun is at a nearby cafe and deliberately speaks loudly. Myrae believes that Hyun is her senior, 15 years older, but she doesn't have as much power in the current position. Hyun goes outside to complain to Ju-yeon, but he's not paying much attention and is only focused on his broken phone. Meanwhile, Hyun-o deliberately turns up the vacuum cleaner to wake Yoon-ho, who is sleeping excessively, almost in a coma. He chases her outside to clean, but they're missing things, so they go to the supermarket together and happily shop for supplies. At the same time, Ju-yeon finds information about Yoon-ho, who looks like Hyeri, working at the parking lot, and goes to her home. He's confused about what's going on when he sees Yoon-ho happily spending time with another guy. The next day, the whole team is waiting for Ju-yeon to arrive for their departure. When he arrives, he apologizes to everyone, saying that he had some business to take care of in Seoul. Everyone is surprised. The special live broadcast during the Golden Week holiday begins. After Hyeri gives Hyun a lecture on live TV, she grabs all the speaking time for herself to satisfy her ego. Later, the group goes for drinks, and everyone is tipsy. Hyeri says that at this age, Hyun has to rely on her talent to get where she is, hinting that there might be something else going on, as rumors suggest. Hyun, refusing to be outdone, starts arguing loudly in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Yoon-ho wakes up and calls for Hyun-o, but he's not there. She immediately starts searching the whole house. Suddenly, he appears with groceries. He decides to go out to eat together, but while he's waiting for her to change, he gets a call. Soo-young is crying and tells him that Maya injured her leg and is now in the hospital. Without hesitation, Hyun-o immediately leaves, leaving Yoon-ho behind. Yoon-ho brought her boyfriend home for the first time. The boyfriend said he was sure he would be the first. She confidently boasted about all her suitors, claiming her beauty was unmatched. She also mentioned having many boyfriends before, but emphasized that Hyun-o was the first one she loved for over 3 months, leaving the boyfriend unsure if he should be happy or sad. Yoon-ho solemnly declared she would marry the man who could tolerate her for over 3 months, a rare feat. While Yoon-ho envisioned a happy family life, Hyun-o suddenly stopped her and confessed he wasn't planning to marry, leaving Yoon-ho heartbroken. Back in the present, Hyun-o was about to go to the market when he saw a necklace hanging on his bike. It brought back memories of his mother leaving their home and giving him the necklace, telling him to look at it whenever he missed her. She had asked him if he could become someone she could see wherever she was. It was then that his dream of becoming a broadcaster was born. At home, his father gave him money to pay off Maya. As Hyun-o was about to leave, he saw Jaeon and Soo-young following him. He took his siblings out to eat. When he went to pay Maya, she noticed the money was short and began interrogating the 3 children. They were too young to lie, so Maya immediately grabbed Hyun-o and beat him up. Hyun-o went back home and continued studying while his father played cards with his friends. Due to their difficult financial situation, Hyun-o had to balance work and school. While he was working as a waiter, Maya came to collect her payment for that month. Hearing this, Hyun-o rushed home and discovered a fire had broken out. He tried to rescue his father, but his uncle stopped him. With no one to protect him anymore, Hyun-o was forced to change schools. On his way to the orphanage, Hyun-o was stopped by Maya, who had come to collect her debt. They sat down, and Maya explained that the debt would be waived if the debtor died. However, she didn't follow the law because the amount owed was too large, so she needed to find a different solution. She offered to clear Hyun-o's debt in exchange for him living with her and paying for his college tuition. She promised to treat him like her own child, but nothing in life is free. Maya demanded one thing in return: if she and 5 other people raised Hyun-o, he would have to repay them with the same dedication he received. Afterward, Maya took Hyun-o to meet everyone and then brought him to his room to rest. Later, Hyun-o learned that his uncle had not come home to feed Jaeon and Soo-young. He decided to go back to Maya and ask her to take in the 2 children. His uncle was still indebted to Maya, so Hyun-o begged her to let them have 3 meals a day and promised that Jaeon would work hard to pay back the debt in the future. Over time, all 5 people took turns caring for Hyun-o and the 2 Moon siblings. Years passed, and the children grew up, while the women aged. One day, Hyja passed away. Hyun-o was proud of caring for the women, but he was also disappointed that he couldn't fulfill everyone's wish of getting married before someone was gone. Back in the present, it was raining heavily, but Hyun-o still rode through the rain to go home and see Yoon-ho. He advised her to embrace pain occasionally, but her response wasn't what he hoped for. Later, Hyun-o went to the hospital to visit Maya. Soo-young was crying loudly, fearing Maya would die. Hyun-o was stunned and speechless as he looked at the woman who had raised him from a young age, now frail and injured. The next day at the company, Shin-jung was frantically looking for the director, asking why the 9 o'clock news anchor had changed. The director announced that a new face, reporter Jeon Yi-young, would be taking over the 9 o'clock news starting next week. At the same time, Yoon-ho was listening to her colleagues discussing how the new face in the news department could possibly anchor the 9 o'clock news. Meanwhile, Shin-jung was pleading with the director to reconsider, and Jin-guk also wanted to help, but Hyun-o was against it. Hyun-o met the director privately and asked him to let Yoon-ho keep anchoring the noon news. Later, Shin-jung called Yoon-ho to his office and accused her of being the reason Hyun-o was dropped from the 9 o'clock news, claiming that he had given up the position because of her. Yoon-ho was shocked and couldn't believe it. She immediately went to find Hyun-o. She stormed into his office and demanded he go back to anchoring the 9 o'clock news, stating that she didn't need him to feel sorry for her and help. Yoon-ho acknowledged that she was a girlfriend who made him feel ashamed, but she was proud of the effort she had put in during their relationship. Therefore, Hyun-o couldn't do that. He told her not to give up and to take care of herself first. The next day, the entire company was abuzz with the latest news about Ju-yeon and Hye-yeon. When Hye-yeon arrived at work, Young-sun handed her a newspaper with a headline about the news anchor's intimate meeting at a hotel. Hye-yeon was astonished that newspapers still published such things. She wanted to report them for invasion of privacy, but Young-sun wouldn't allow it. Young-sun wanted Hye-yeon to apologize publicly because the public's reaction was intense. Hye-yeon argued that she had only been drinking with Ju-yeon and Soo-hyun and hadn't done anything wrong, so why should she apologize? Suddenly, the news department director called her. In his office, he demanded that Hye-yeon step down from the news and write a letter of apology. She refused, claiming she had done nothing wrong. Dong-min immediately criticized her, pointing out the chaos she was causing at the company. Meanwhile, Ju-yeon arrived at work, and a colleague informed him that he had been secretly photographed at the hotel and the pictures were published in the newspaper. The entire company and online community were in an uproar. Ju-yeon didn't seem too concerned and said he had spoken to reporters, but they didn't publish a correction. That evening, Ju-yeon went to see Hye-yeon to apologize for the incident. She burst into tears, lamenting that the worst part was the newspaper article. He took the paper and read the article, but it was nothing new to him. Hye-yeon cried, pointing out that her face looked awful in the leaked photos. Ju-yeon was taken aback, as he hadn't realized this. In the end, Hye-yeon posted an apology, although it was insignificant. Yoon-ho wished she could become Hyeri to see how happy that personality was. Later, when she went to work, she was reprimanded by a coworker for taking a day off without permission. Min-young noticed she seemed unusually quiet that day. They went their separate ways to work. Hyeri was carrying boxes to her workplace when she heard someone calling her. She turned around and saw Ju-yeon approaching and greeting her. They sat down and chatted. Ju-yeon was curious about the man Hyeri had been seen with in front of her house, wondering who he was. He also remembered her saying she was an only child. Hyeri explained that the man was Yoon-ho, and that she recently discovered she had a twin sister. The next day was Media Seoul's sports day. Hye-yeon's dodgeball team faced off against the team of a hefty girl. Both teams were confident, but there was a hint of disdain in their eyes. The hefty girl went first but proved to be a skilled player. Hye-yeon, on the other hand, danced around the ball, racking up points. As she celebrated, she was suddenly attacked by the hefty girl and got a bloody nose. She was unable to participate in the doubles match with Ju-yeon. The organizers asked her to find a substitute. Just then, Hyeri arrived with snacks and was immediately pulled in to play doubles with Ju-yeon. The duo played brilliantly and won. As they rested outside, Ju-yeon was criticized for only focusing on defense and not attacking enough. Later, the organizers announced it was Ju-yeon's turn for the men's dodgeball tournament. Hye-yeon and Hyeri were surprised to see him play so well. Suddenly, Hyeri was bumped into by a stranger carrying a box. Hye-yeon noticed that the stranger had a bleeding hand, but Hyeri felt no pain. The next day, Yoon-ho returned to work. She sat pondering how she had asked the director to let Hyun-o return to the 9 o'clock news, but the director had only agreed because Hyun-o was a star and Yoon-ho was nothing. She went to team leader Kim's office and reported that she would no longer be anchoring the noon news and would return the position to Hyun-o. She wanted Shin-jung to go to the director and plead with him, but she didn't know that the personnel change had already been decided. If it was simply a matter of her change of mind and the director easily agreeing, there wouldn't have been any need for Shin-jung to beg Chin-guk. Team leader Kim went crazy, as he had done everything possible but failed. Now Shin-jung hoped that Yi-yang would ruin the news, causing chaos and forcing Chin-guk to beg for Jong Hyun-o. The next day, Ju-yeon went to the recording studio where Hyun-o worked. As he and the others were getting ready, Yoon-ho arrived. She was surprised to see both Ju-yeon and Hyun-o, but they only exchanged quick glances due to their work. After they finished, Ju-yeon called out to Yoon-ho, as he hadn't had a chance to greet her earlier. As he reached out to shake her hand, he noticed that her hand was injured, just like Hyeri's the previous day. He gripped her hand tightly, confused and wondering what else she was hiding from him. Hyun-o called out to him, and he let go. The following day, Yoon-ho was walking down the street when she heard someone calling out her name, Hyeri. She turned around. Yoon-ho was surprised to see Ju-yeon in front of her. They went into a cafe together. Ju-yeon scolded her, asking if she felt guilty for working as a broadcaster at PPS while also taking on side jobs at the parking lot. He questioned if she felt guilty for pretending to be Hyeri to get close to him while simultaneously seeing Hyun-o, or if she felt guilty about being too timing. Yoon-ho replied that maybe all of it was sincere, even though she didn't remember anything. She confessed that she had multiple personality disorder, but she had only recently found out. She thought she simply had temporary amnesia and had struggled to accept herself. Yoon-ho believed Ju-yeon would find it even harder to accept. He asked if he could see Hyeri tomorrow. He knew that her other personality could reappear at any time. Ju-yeon was agitated and decided to pretend he didn't know anything, as if he had never been there. He wanted to forget everything that had happened, but then asked if he could see Hyeri again. Yoon-ho didn't know how to answer and could only apologize for hurting him. Meanwhile, Hyun-o was making coffee for his colleagues when team leader Kim approached him with good news. He had just attended a meeting with company leaders. The morale within the company was terrible because the director had confidently chosen Yi-yang without any evidence. Everyone was waiting to see how Yi-yang would perform. If he failed, he would be fired immediately. A while later, a colleague announced that it was time. Shin-jung turned on the TV, awaiting the good news, but it didn't go as he had expected. Team leader Kim was dumbfounded. Yi-yang's delivery was incredibly smooth. Later, Yoon-ho finished her work and heard her colleagues gossiping about how amazing Yi-yang's newscast was. She quickly opened her phone to see the person who had replaced Hyun-o. Yoon-ho felt disheartened as she reminisced about her memories with Hyun-o. She was surprised that he had taken on the 4 o'clock news position after working overnight. He wouldn't have any time to sleep if he accepted this new job on top of his existing one. Yoon-ho worried about his health when she went home that night and scolded him for not taking care of himself. She knew it was difficult to be a new guy in a tough environment, but Hyun-o was determined to read the news after learning how it had come to him and the challenges it presented. After Hyun-o finished his work, Yoon-ho comforted him, hoping he wasn't feeling too stressed or tired. They hadn't been home long when Hyun-o received a call from the director. He immediately answered and said he would be right there. Yoon-ho chastised Hyun-o for not thinking about himself. After a moment of contemplation, she went back to find him. As she was waiting for the elevator, she heard her colleagues talking about Hyun-o. They mentioned that he was about to get married. Hyun-o was about to reply, but then he saw her standing there, looking at him. Ma-ya announced that she had cancer, causing everyone to panic. They were distraught and began crying, urging her to get treatment. Hyun-o suddenly appeared and heard their conversation. He was stunned and couldn't believe it was true. Later, the entire family huddled together, trying to convince Ma-ya to go to the hospital for treatment. Ma-ya refused, saying she was comfortable where she was and that if she had to die, she wanted to do so in this place. Yeon-ja said that if Ma-ya didn't want to live anymore, she would die too. The other two women agreed and said they would die with Ma-ya. Hyun-o pleaded with Ma-ya, asking her not to be stubborn and to go to the hospital, saying he didn't know what he would do without her. Maya reluctantly agreed to receive treatment, but not to go to the hospital. She made one wish, that Hyun-o get married and build a happy family. Hyun-o was surprised but didn't want to accept. He wanted Maya to change her mind. He said even if he got married, no woman would want to marry him. Suddenly, a young woman, a granddaughter of the ladies, stepped forward and volunteered to marry Hyun-o. She sat down with him and explained that she didn't like him, but she loved the ladies in the house and wanted to become an official member of their family. Hyun-o said that no matter what, it wouldn't work out. He was torn between Maya's wish and his lack of options. The next day, Hyun-o was at work when he heard rumors that he was getting married. He was about to respond, but then he saw Yoon-ho standing there, listening. Yoon-ho walked around the company, lost in thought. She was distressed and confused. Suddenly, she heard team leader Kim calling her. He asked why she wasn't working on the newscast. As the newscast began, Yoon-ho became anxious again and accidentally mumbled something into the microphone. After it was over, Yoon-ho and her assistant went to the director's office. He was furious, saying that on air, even breathing loudly was unacceptable. Chin-guk reprimanded Yoon-ho, saying she had been working for 14 years and still managed to mumble on air. He said news was about trust and asked if she realized how ridiculous the newscast they had just ruined was. Yoon-ho was extremely stressed throughout the whole ordeal. Later, Yoon-ho asked Hyun-o to meet up. She blamed him for wanting to break up with her over marriage in the past. She asked him why he was now talking about getting married to someone else. Yoon-ho demanded an explanation for the rumors about his wedding. He explained that he was indeed getting married. Yoon-ho immediately cut him off. She couldn't control herself after hearing those words. It wasn't a problem for her that he had another woman because they had broken up. She remembered when they first met, he had told her he would never get married. Because of that promise, they had ended their relationship. She asked him what she meant to him. Meanwhile, Ju-yeon went to the parking lot but couldn't find Hyeri. He went to work and sat there, lost in thought, wondering when she would reappear. Ju-yeon suddenly craved udon and invited Hyun to join him. That evening at the restaurant, Ju-yeon ate in silence, lamenting to himself even with someone sitting across from him, saying that everything would be alright. He just had to be patient and wait, and she would appear. The next day, Yoon-ho was on her way to work. She was lost in thought on the train, remembering when she and Hyun-o first got close. He had searched the entire stadium for her lost bracelet, which was a gift from her mother. He cried uncontrollably when he couldn't find it, and Yoon-ho comforted him and bought him a new one. They then went out to eat meat together and became closer. Still lost in her thoughts, Yoon-ho arrived at work. She wrote an apology to everyone for being late that morning, explaining that she was lost in thought and missed many stops on the train. Team leader Kim saw her and scolded her for making such a basic mistake. Yoon-ho was called into the director's office. He berated her and told her to get out of the 12 o'clock news. Chin-guk couldn't understand why Hyun-o had protected her and helped her get the 9 o'clock news position. That night, Hyun-o went to see Maya. He told her he no longer wanted to get married. He said she needed to go to the hospital to get checked. Maya said that whether she got treatment or not, her fate was already decided. She explained that her wish wasn't to keep him by her side. She wanted someone to protect her in her final days. Therefore, Maya urged him to get married and be happy so she could leave peacefully. Hyun-o was stunned and contemplated what she had said. The next day, Yoon-ho presented the news with Hyun-o, and then she returned to her desk to write a report because she had been fired from the LS-Suin program by Director So. Yoon-ho was still lost in thought, lost in her sadness. Jaeon came to comfort her. Yoon-ho blamed herself for being fired from the noon news and for Hyun-o giving up his 9 o'clock news position for her. He had put his dreams on hold, and she couldn't even manage to hold onto it properly. Yoon-ho went home and read Hyeri's diary. She added a note at the end, saying she hated her current self. Time passed, and everyone went about their daily lives. Hyun-o went home more often to take care of Maya. After days of contemplation, Hyun-o went to the place where he and Yoon-ho had broken up. He remembered how he had let her go that day. He then went to Yoon-ho's house, determined to do something. Days turned into weeks. Hyun-o went to team leader Kim's office. Kim informed him that he had been assigned to the 10 o'clock news. Hyun-o was puzzled because the show had been cancelled. He had already asked Shin-jung about it. It was true. Team leader Kim also wondered why Yoon-ho hadn't contacted him recently. She had taken a long leave of absence and disappeared. She hadn't said anything, and rumors had spread that she had vanished after Hyun-o got married. Hyun-o refuted the rumor, declaring that he would never get married, and then walked away. Meanwhile, Ju-yeon continued going to the parking lot every day to see if Hyeri was there. He searched for any sign of her. The next day, Jaeon and Cho-rong were out for coffee. Cho-rong revealed that she actually liked Hyun-o. Jaeon was confused, asking how that was possible since she had previously said she only liked his family and didn't care about men like him. They were still discussing this when Hyun-o suddenly appeared. He called out to Cho-rong and questioned her about her previous statement that she only wanted to marry into his family. He admitted that her statement had given him pause, but he didn't feel that strongly about her. Therefore, he told her to never mention marriage again. That evening, Hyun-o went home to visit the ladies. They were sitting together, chatting, when Cho-rong rushed in, excitedly announcing that Do Hyung had appeared from behind. Shin-young, overjoyed, ran to hug her husband. The whole family gathered to eat dinner, and Cho-rong explained that Do Hyung had committed a crime and had to run away, even climbing mountains and rowing boats. The whole family was eating, but Do Hyung and Shin-young held hands and acted romantically, making everyone nauseous. The next day, Ju-yeon went to PPS to find Hyun-o. He wanted to know where Yoon-ho was and what their relationship was like now. Hyun-o was surprised that he would ask this, but he calmly replied that they were now just colleagues. Ju-yeon revealed that he was dating Hyeri, another personality of Yoon-ho's. He had learned about her multiple personality disorder, but only recently. The Hyeri he loved was 28 years old and worked at the parking lot. Hyun-o was stunned. He had no idea Yoon-ho had multiple personalities, and that Ju Hyeri was her younger sister. Hyun-o remembered that his ex-girlfriend had sometimes seemed to be different people. Ju-yeon admitted that he loved Hyeri, the one inside Yoon-ho. He had been waiting for her, but she hadn't appeared, so he had tried to find out what Yoon-ho was doing. When he couldn't find her, he came to Hyun-o. Ju-yeon scolded Hyun-o, saying he didn't care about Yoon-ho's condition, and that he didn't realize she was sick while he was dating her. He questioned what was really important to Hyun-o. Hyun-o was speechless. He stepped outside and suddenly remembered Yoon-ho mentioning a clinic. He went there immediately. The doctor said that they couldn't disclose all the patient's information. They also had an obligation to keep the contents of the consultation confidential. However, if he wasn't uncomfortable, he could talk about his own story. Hyun-o felt a pang of sadness because he had a girlfriend who had multiple personality disorder. They had broken up 4 years ago. He had learned about her condition from the man she was dating, a different personality. He knew he didn't have the right to know, and admitted that he didn't want to break up, but they had to. He was shocked to learn that she had been living as a different person while he was unaware. The doctor explained that multiple personality disorder is often linked to past traumatic events or stress. The most important thing was to share his story to start healing. The doctor said that knowing someone was there for her during the process would be a huge comfort to Yoon-ho. Hyun-o went to her apartment, but no one answered. The next day, Yi-jong, who was heading to work, approached Hyun-o. He wanted to ask him about Yoon-ho's sister who worked at the parking lot. Hyun-o remembered what Ju-yeon had said about her and rushed downstairs to see. Min-young, as usual, reported that Hyeri was not there, but then she looked up, startled. The man was not Ju-yeon. She thought he was a police officer questioning her, but after checking online, she realized he was a broadcaster from PPS. Hyun-o asked about Hyeri's current work and life. After getting the answers, he went home, passing the ladies who were eating dinner. He went to his room, thinking about his ex-girlfriend and her condition that he had been unaware of. He was filled with regret and sank to the floor, weeping silently. Maya, realizing something was wrong, came to his side. She saw his pain and cried with him. The scene shifts to PPS. Jaeon and Jin Hwa finished the news. She went to Jin Hwa to ask for a favor. Rumors were circulating about Jin Hwa and the director, and she wanted him to pretend to be dating her. Jaeon found it ridiculous and wasn't interested. As he was about to leave, he heard Jin Hwa say that she had met Ju Yoon-ho. Meanwhile, Hyun-o was working when he received a call, but he didn't answer. The phone continued ringing, and Yi-jong kept chattering, driving Hyun-o crazy with stress. Hyun-o finally picked up the phone and heard the police say they were looking for Yoon-ho. He rushed to the station. The police told him that Yoon-ho was in a tent on top of a mountain, but she wasn't speaking. They thought she was dead. The police wanted him to sign a form to claim her body and take her home. Hyun-o was confused. He didn't know who they were talking about. The police then said the person was Hyeri, who had been missing for 10 years. Hyun-o sat next to Yoon-ho, reminiscing about their previous date. Yoon-ho, in her Hyeri personality, was walking with Hyun-o in a park. The sun was shining, a gentle breeze blew, and butterflies fluttered around. Hyeri was shy and awkward, like a young girl. Hyun-o teased her, asking if she was made of dough because she was so cute. Hyeri replied that he always took her to romantic places and called her late at night. She had asked everyone around, and they all said he liked her. Yoon-ho giggled and asked him if he had feelings for her. But then she thought, how could a handsome and intelligent guy like Hyun-o like Hyeri? She changed the subject, asking about lunch, when suddenly Hyun-o walked up and said he did like Hyeri. He said he called her and took her on dates because it was obvious, and Hyeri was silly if she didn't realize it. Then he said he liked mixed vegetable stew and left, leaving Hyeri stunned and speechless. The scene shifts to a bus stop. Hyun-o was telling Yoon-ho he had stopped liking her because his pursuit had gone unanswered. Yoon-ho, in her Yoon-ho personality, didn't understand what was happening. She heard him say he had pursued her for a month. Hyun-o got on the bus, leaving Yoon-ho fuming. She couldn't believe he was so passive. Didn't he know how to express his feelings properly so she could give him an answer? Back in the present, the bus arrived. Hyun-o got on, followed by Yoon-ho. This brought back memories of their past. Yoon-ho blamed him for doing things his way, but he could always make her happy by just sweet-talking her. She remembered how she used to be so smitten with him, always complimenting him on his good looks. She looked at him now and realized he was completely different. Meanwhile, Jaeon was remembering how she had been smitten with a lively and bright girl when she first joined the company. But that girl was already with her boyfriend, so Jaeon kept her feelings hidden. When she was bullied by senior colleagues, Yoon-ho was always there to support and comfort her. Even after Yoon-ho broke up with her boyfriend, Jaeon gradually confessed her feelings and showed her care. At the police station, Jaeon was asking about the woman who fainted in front of the Diding Kang supermarket. Hyun-o was following behind Yoon-ho, ensuring her safety. Yoon-ho returned to her apartment, looking like she had lost her soul. Hyun-o, concerned, asked her what was wrong and saw the cut on her hand. He felt sympathy for her, but she remained silent and avoided him. Seeing this, he let her rest and went to get some things for her. The password to her apartment was still his birthday. While he was getting things, he was drawn to a diary on the table. He read the entire thing and discovered that the second personality, Hyeri, had been dating a man named Ju-yeon. He was heartbroken as he read Hyeri's letter to Yoon-ho, wanting to take over her unhappy life. Looking at a picture on the table, he understood what had happened. He went back to Yoon-ho's room, gave her the things, and asked about her current identity. Seeing that she wasn't responding, he gently said he would make dinner and wait for her. Ju-yeon was so heartbroken he drowned his sorrows in alcohol. Min-young came to him and said she had noticed he was acting strangely lately. She assumed he had broken up with his girlfriend because Hyeri had cheated on him. Ju-yeon replied that a person only has one heart. He couldn't hold back and called Hyeri, but Hyun-o answered the phone. He asked about Yoon-ho, but all he learned was that she was safe and had returned home. Hyun-o went back to his room and found Yoon-ho asleep. Ju-yeon and Jaeon arrived to visit Yoon-ho, but ran into Hyun-o. They all ended up at a cafe, getting to know each other and subtly vying for Yoon-ho's affections. Hyun-o was lost in thought, while the other two engaged in a verbal battle. Jaeon laughed when Ju-yeon said he had been dating Yoon-ho for a month, because she knew her for much longer. Seeing the tension, Hyun-o declared that he was the one best suited to be Yoon-ho's guardian, then told them to leave. At Hyun-o's home, the ladies were worried because he hadn't come home the previous night. At the company, Hyun-o's colleagues were confused because he suddenly called in sick. Even Soo-young, who was like family to him, didn't know what was going on. Meanwhile, Hyun-o was walking with Yoon-ho when he saw Ju-yeon waiting at her door. He tried to stop Ju-yeon, but he shouted to Yoon-ho that he was happy as long as she was healthy. He liked Hyeri because she was by his side, and there was nothing more to it. Hearing this, Yoon-ho ran over to Ju-yeon and hugged him, much to Hyun-o's surprise. Hyun-o returned to work, but his mind was still on the scene of his rival being hugged by Yoon-ho. Jae-on, seeing him lost in thought, asked him to talk outside for a moment. She told him that she had gone to the forest where Yoon-ho was staying and found something. She was envious of Hyun-o because, even though Yoon-ho wanted to forget everything, she held onto his memories. The scene shifts to Yoon-ho telling Ju-yeon that she was now her true self, but she wanted to be carefree like Hyeri and live like that, but she couldn't. She went into the forest by herself and lived in a house there. She lived happily as Hyeri, until one day there was a heavy storm. Scared, she cut her own arm and ran away. She ran through the rain, hiding her tears, until she collapsed near a supermarket and was rescued by an old woman. Yoon-ho realized she had never been happy. She thought back to when Hyun-o was with her, showering her with affection. It was the anniversary of her sister Hyeri's death, and she didn't want to be alone. Hyun-o came to her and hugged her. At that moment, she felt a little happy. Back in the present, Yoon-ho told Ju-yeon that she couldn't be Hyeri anymore. She said goodbye to him. She appreciated the time he spent loving Hyeri. Hyun-o also remembered the past when he was always there for Yoon-ho, gentle and caring. Yoon-ho had a happy smile on her face. She asked Hyun-o if he could love her forever. He replied, "Forever." Suddenly, Hyun-o stood up and ran out, causing his co-worker to jump. He rushed to the street and hailed a taxi. The traffic was terrible. Impatient, Hyun-o got out of the cab and ran towards his love. Yoon-ho was folding up her sad diary, remembering her love. She had thought she had never been happy until she had Hyun-o. She looked at her beloved and wished she could stay in this moment forever. She thought to herself, if she saw him again, she would definitely tell him this. Suddenly, her phone rang. She answered and ran outside. She saw Hyun-o approaching. They froze for a moment, then rushed into each other's arms, embracing passionately.